Hello everyone and welcome to Marie's Scrappy Creations, where we sew the scraps of your life into beautiful creations. This time I have for you another notebook cover, but what is different about this one? Okay, I'll show you. The last time we made these, we used a regular composition notebook that you could find at any store, basically. But the problem I had with these wasn't the covers. It was fun making those. It's that when you tear a piece of paper out of these, some of the other ones tend to fall out. I didn't care for that. But I like the size of the notebook. So I did a little internet search and found that you can get spiral bound composition notebooks. So I bought some, I was gifted some, so what's a girl to do? You've got to make some covers for them. Now, I did make one plain. It's just all one fabric, as you can see. And in the past, with the other ones, with the other notebooks, see, I've made scrappy ones. I wish I had more here, but I have gifted them. They make wonderful gifts for any time. As I'm filming this, we're coming up on Christmas time. So yes, sure, they make a good Christmas gift, but they make a great gift any time of year for anyone, because who can't use a notebook? I'm going to use this one to write down recipes in, or cooking notes. I'm all the time making spice mixes and things, and I write them down on slips of paper, and they're all over my kitchen. Okay, so we're going to make this, and anything that you are going to need to make this is going to be listed in the description box below. I'm going to include some links so that you can go back and you can see how to make this, because maybe you're new here and it's been a couple of years probably since I made this. But either way, if you can't find these local to you, I could not, but I live in northern Maine. It's difficult to find things at Walmart. So I went online. I will leave you the link to where you can buy these. I'll just leave you one link. I'm sure there's plenty of places you can buy them, but I'll leave you a link as well as the links, as I said, for the other videos, because you can add pockets to your flaps. You can add pockets to the front, zippers in the front. You can add a ribbon as a bookmark. The possibilities are endless, and I know you're going to have a lot of fun with this. You can see I appliqued on the front of mine. Now, I don't show how to do that in this video because I showed it in a previous video, so there again, you'll have to click the links. Okay, no more chat. Let's get busy. Okay, so first off, I wanted to show you, just in case, the difference. Now, this is the spiral bound composition notebook, and you'll notice that it says 9 3/4 by 7 1/2, and that's this part, not counting the spiral, because here we have the exact same book, only with no spiral binding. See, so we're doing this to make room for that. So I have another tutorial for this, and the link will be below. When I made this one, I made scrappy ones and plain, like this. This is actually for this one, but there's one that's just plain. You can use yardage. You could use yardage and put some fussy cut fabrics on there. All right, I just want to show you really quickly. When you measure these, how I arrive at my measurements is I use one of these kind of, I think they call them a cloth tape measure, and I just do this, whoops, around to the other side, and then I arrive at my measurement, to which I add my seam allowances. But if you don't want to do that, you can just follow what I'm doing, because I got it all worked out with this. So you will need a spiral bound composition notebook cover. And again, if all you have is this available, look down below in the description box. There is a link to 1 or 2 tutorials on this. Okay, and then you're going to need your fabrics. I'll go over the measurements for those in a moment. I will also write them on paper so that you can screen grab them or something, screenshot them. You're going to need your fusibles. And again, I'm going to go over what they are and your cuts here in just a moment. You're going to need a 1/4 inch foot and an all-purpose foot, especially if you are doing quilting. So if after you get your batting behind your outer part, if you want to quilt it, you're going to need either a walking foot or your all-purpose foot. I can't imagine needing a quilting foot. Okay, you're going to need your thread. I'm just using some Coats & Clark all-purpose acrylic, I guess it is. Use whatever you have. Pins or clips, whichever you prefer. The sewing needle size that I'm using is an 80-12. You're going to need something to turn your points with, a point turner or knitting needle, pencil, scissors, rotary cutter, acrylic ruler, your mat, your iron. And if you're going to do something like what I did here and do it the way I do it, which there's more than one way to do it, but if you do it like I do, you're going to need some Heat Bond Lite. And the other thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to go over this part today in the tutorial because I have covered it in other tutorials, and again, the links for those will be below. Okay. So let's get into the measurements. Okay, so your outer piece, your front cover, whatever you want to call it, is going to measure 11 1/4 by 17 3/4. And again, I will put these measurements on screen as well as down below in the description box. You'll notice that I have 2 pieces here so that I could have a little decoration to the front of mine. So even though I came out with my 11 1/4 by 17 3/4, on this one I used one that was 6 inches and one that was 5 3/4. Whatever you do, just make sure you add your seam allowances of 1/4 inch, so that you arrive at the right measurement. If you are going to quilt this, cut it a little larger, quilt it, and then cut it down to your size that you need. Then you're going to need a lining for the inside that measures exactly the same, 17 3/4 by 11 1/4. These are flap pieces for the inner flaps. Okay, so you're going to need 2 of these that measure 10 inches by 11 1/4. You could play around with this. If you have pieces that are 9 inches by 11 1/4, that will work. Just something close to 10 inches. But use what you have on hand so that we don't waste fabric. Now, for the front cover, I have used cotton batting. I've used Pellon 973. I've used all kinds of things. But personally, I like to use SF 101 because it's not overly heavy. I like the feel of it. It's a personal choice. Whatever you think you're going to want. I think on this one I used Pellon 973, and it's not heavy by any means, but use what you think you want, experiment a little bit. So this is SF 101, which is basically just a lightweight interfacing. And the SF 101 measures 16 3/4 by 10 1/4. So it's just 1 inch difference from this, so that when we sew our seams, we don't get all that bulk in our seams. So you need one of that, 16 3/4 by 10 1/4. You need 2 of these for your flap pieces. So this is again SF 101. Measures 10 1/4 by 4 1/2. So 2 of those. Okay, and I will pop those up on the screen, and then we're going to get going on that part. The one thing I forgot to say is, if you are going to hand sew the opening, which we'll get to, you're going to need a hand sewing needle. Okay. I generally do it that way. I think it shows, when you're on the machine, it kind of shows the stitches. So, but you do whatever you're comfortable with, you know, whatever makes you happy. And also, if you want to use a ribbon marker, you're going to want a piece that's about 10 inches, because when you go to put it together, you're going to place it kind of in here so that it hangs down. I'm not going to do that with this notebook. I'm not a huge fan of having a marker in them. Okay, let's get going. Okay, we're going to set aside the lining. We don't need that. There's no interfacing or batting going there. I'm going to set the front cover aside, and we'll start with the flaps. So this is the 11 1/4 inch measurement. Just fold it in half, and we're going to make a crease. So I'm going to turn on some steam. Just want a good crease there. I'll let that cool. Iron the other one. And I go into a lot more depth in my other tutorials, so if you haven't made one of these before, you might want to check one or both of them out. Alrighty, so we're going to open these up, and the pieces that were 10 1/4 by 4 1/2, you're going to center them so that you can just eyeball it, that they have the 1/2 inch on each end. Then we'll press that SF 101 right in there. And I have my heat on high. It doesn't take a long time for the SF 101, but you do want to hold it there a few seconds to make sure everything stays in place. There's one. Make sure that comes right up to your crease. Yeah, in some of my other ones, I have put pockets onto the flaps, pockets onto the front zippers, the ribbon markers. There's all different ways to make these. You can make them all gussied up or just plain. And as you see, I'm not putting pockets on this one or zippers. We're just going with the basics today. Actually, this one is for me, and I'm going to use it to keep recipes in. In my kitchen, you could tell, if you didn't already know, that my kitchen is done with red and roosters. It's been a few days since I ironed this, so I'm just going to give it a quick press. All right. And again, you can use something different than what I'm using here, but this is SF 101. And it's very wrinkly. It came from a great big piece of it. This is actually not the brand name SF 101. It is from Wawak. I guess that's how you pronounce it. But I'll leave a link below. I buy it there because you get, you can buy it in different sizes, but you get big pieces and it really ends up being so much cheaper. But not just that, I really like it. I like the quality of it, the feel, the thickness. I like it all. I want to make sure that's stuck pretty well. I guess it did. I'll give it a little press over here. I like to give it a little bit of steam, personally. I don't think they say to use it, but I find it doesn't hurt. All right, got that iron off. I'm done for now. Okay, so let me get back to the table instead of the ironing board. Okay, front cover, face up. Take your flaps, the openings go towards the edge. This fabric with the little chicken wire seems to be a little bit stringy, what I call stringy, but we're going to work with it. Okay, I'm going to pin these flaps into place. Because I'm going to take them to the sewing machine in just a minute, and I'll let you know what I'm going to do. Okay, and again, the opening is towards the edge. Make sure everything is straight. So the next thing we're going to do is go along these edges from here. I'm going to back tack just one stitch and I'm going to go all the way around. Not that it's that far, but we're going to go from here to here and then from here to here. And I'm going to use a basting stitch, probably a stitch length of 4. Just basting just means a long stitch that helps hold everything in place. And believe me, it's so much easier if you take this step. If you are an experienced sewist and you feel you don't need it, you can skip it. Personally, I don't. All right, let's do that. Before I sew, I just realized that I didn't put something out there. If you have cotton batting or your pellon behind your front, if you're going to quilt it, you need to quilt it and trim it down to size before your flaps. Because if I were quilting this, I just would have cut it larger, this front piece, and quilted it, and then I would have cut it to 17 3/4 by 11 1/4. Anyway, I apologize that I forgot to say that if you were quilting it, to do that before the flaps. And usually my fabric would be oriented the other way, but I'm using the side of the 1/4 inch foot. On the left side of it, it's a 1/8 inch measurement. So I'm going to grab that thread, that bobbin thread, so we don't have any bunching. Oops, what did I do? Oh, there we go. Okay, get them both underneath there. I only struggle when I'm filming. Right, stitch length 4 1/2. That looks good to me. Okay, now I'm just going around the edge, as you can see. Just holding that on there. put my fabric backwards to what I'm used to, and I get all discombobulated here. Okay, here we are. Remove my pins, or you can remove your clips if that's what you're using. Okay. Now the only time you need to pay attention to which way your lining is going is if it's a directional fabric, because, you know, it's going to be on the inside. Let's see, this is one with a pocket. Yeah, I didn't put a pocket there. I just did fancy stitching on the flap pieces. Okay, so let's take your lining and put it face down. Okay. Now I am going to say that you need to watch your seam allowances, your 1/4 inch. That's important for your notebook to fit. I did leave a 1/4 inch of what I call easement to make sure that we had enough. Let me get this all pinned. I like to pin it from this side. We're going to leave an opening. I like to pin my 4 corners. Make sure everything's in place. Right, I want to make sure, okay, this is the top. I'm going to pin that well. Okay, so this is the bottom of the notebook cover. We want to stay away from the flaps, because if you leave your opening here and you have to deal with this when you're trying to tuck it in, you can do it, it's just not as quick and easy. So I'm going to pin near the edge. All you have to do is feel where that ridge is. I'm going to pin that. Same thing here. And then I'm going to leave an opening, okay, to flip this right side out. And I generally use, you know, pins that aren't the same pins I'm using, besides the fact that I'm using ones that are going or I'm putting them in the opposite way of what they go. So that opening, I guess it's about 5 inches, and that's good for me. Okay, let's take this over to the machine. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to use a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. Okay, so I'm going to start at my first pin. Guess I should change my stitch length. It's still on 4.5 millimeters here. again, that's 2.5. So I'm going to back tack a couple of stitches, and away we go. And in case you didn't know, I'm going to try to zoom in here. There's a little mark on the end. There's a line, right? Well, it's hard to point to it. It's going across here on your 1/4 inch foot. If that line lines up with the edge of your fabric, you are 1/4 of an inch from the end or the edge of your fabric, which is where I am. It's a handy little feature. If you're wondering what I did, I changed my stitch length. I lowered it so that when I got to the edge, I was 1/4 inch from the edge. Okay, we are almost around. We go down the side and just a little ways to go now. You didn't hear me hit that pen, did you? Did it really happen if nobody heard it? Okay, let's go over to the table. All right, going to take out my pins, trim my thread. Okay, without going too close, you're going to trim your corner. I also like to take just a little bit of the bulk off the sides, but that's personal preference. If you do get too close, you can always flip it through or stitch it again. The same thing if you're flipping it right side out and you take your point turner and you poke it too close, you can always flip it to this, to what it looks like right now, and just stitch it again. It really won't make that big of a difference. I did that on the last one I made. I poked it because I had trimmed too close. It was my own fault. All right, one more. Okay, our opening. Let's flip this out. It doesn't matter which side the flaps are on at the moment. You just turn it right side out. When I do, I like to take one of my fingers and just kind of poke that corner with my finger. Sometimes I don't need my point turner, depending on how easy or difficult that piece wants to be. Okay. So as you can see, I need to flip my flaps. So let's flip our flaps. Okay, and I must have put my point turner on my other table. And through the magic that is filming, I found my point turner. When I came back, look at that. See? I trimmed it too close. I'm going to go back and sew that. I'll be right back. Okay, I fixed my error. Now I'm going to carefully use my point turner on anything that needs it. See, I'm not going to do that one. That one looks pretty good. This one just needs a little bit. Okay. Let me grab the iron with some steam. Okay, that was quick, wasn't it? Okay, so as I said earlier, we need to be careful with our seam allowances so that the notebook fits inside the cover. And one thing you want to be careful of when you're, because you don't want to skip this step of pressing, I guess is what I'm getting at. Because if you don't get this straightened out, like let's say that gets down in there and it gets, so it's not straight, or there's some bunched up, your measurements will not be right. In this situation, I'm going to show you what I do for part of it. It's going to look like I'm making wrinkles, which I am on my other fabric, but I'm going to flatten that seam just a little bit, like that. Oops, turn on some steam. I want to flatten that so that I have a basis. See, now I can make that nice and straight, just like that. So starting in my center, I'm going to work outward. And I'm wiggling this way to make sure that I don't have anything caught up there. Same thing on the side, you want to make sure. I think I'm out of water. Just about. It's a good thing I keep it handy. I use a little plant watering, I guess a plant waterer. Is that what you call it? I don't know. I'm thinking about sewing, not plants. But I found this at Martin's for, I think, like 50 cents about 10 years ago. And I've used it ever since, mostly for ironing. There's some steam. Go to the other side. And again, work those edges out so you know your measurements will be correct. I love these fabrics. Sounds like someone opening a soda. Or a beer, is that what they say? I've never drank a beer in my life. I tried one time, but I didn't like it. Wasn't there a commercial? I don't remember if it was soda or beer, but I'm going to say the 1980s, where you'd hear the click of them pulling the bottle cap, the tab, and it would go Okay, let's get back to sewing. All right, so here's our opening. We're going to leave a 1/4 inch, or we're going to fold it up to be a 1/4 inch. So I flip it every which way 40 times. I always have to look and see what I have here. I'm going to try this one. So as you see, I am using my fingers to do this, and I'm just kind of pressing it with my fingers for the moment. Going to grab a ruler, all right? So over here it's 10.5. Are we at 10.5 in the middle? That way we'll know if we folded it in 1/4 inch, and we are. Alrighty. So this is where you need to make the decision of whether you are going to hand stitch or machine stitch this closed, okay? And earlier I told you, every single one of you, I told you I generally hand sew. And generally I do, but guess what I'm going to do today? I'm going to break my own rules. And I'm going to machine stitch it. It is quicker that way. And you know, if this were a gift, I definitely would be hand stitching it. Okay, I'm going to mark that. My first pin is where it starts. My second pin is where it ends, and I'm going to go just catch just the teeniest, tiniest little piece of that. I'm not going to take you to the sewing machine, but I'm going to try to stay just barely under 1/8 of an inch on that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I did machine stitch this across there, and I just don't care for how it looks that way. So I threaded a needle. Okay, in case no one's ever seen me do this or seen this method done, this is a double thread, so both of these are thread ends. I don't know how to describe it. And this up here is where the loop is. Okay, I'm going to pull that loop all the way down. Well, not all the way, but I'm going to leave myself a little bit of an edge. And this is how I start when I hand sew, so that there's no knot. You pull it so it's almost through, and then put your needle through like that. And I am simply going to do, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit there, a ladder stitch, I guess is what it's called. I like a finer needle, but boy, I have not been able to find hand sewing needles recently that I care for. So you take a little bit from the front piece, and then you go straight back behind that, take a little piece of the back. You just keep doing that, front, back, and just check every so often to make sure that your thread isn't tangled. I don't know where that little piece is coming from, but okay, I'll get it. And you just keep going like that. And you could use one thickness of thread if you wanted to. Totally up to you. I've got to go back and straighten that. I've got a piece that's... Anyway, I think that's that little thread that was there. Okay, so just continue. If you're sewing it by hand, just continue that a little bit in the front, little bit in the back, until you get all the way across your opening. Just like that. And it really doesn't show. It's a great stitch if you want to sew something that doesn't end up showing. Right, my bottom is all stitched. So now we just need to stitch around the outer edge. I do pin it just randomly because I don't want anything to shift. It's always good. If you sew it from the front, which I don't recommend, whoops, you have to be careful. See, if you sew it around and it's this way up, these can get fetched up or folded back. So that's why I find it best to stitch from this side. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance going all the way around, and I use a longer stitch length on these. Use a 3. You can use whatever you're comfortable with, but I generally do about a 3. You could do a 3.5, whatever you think you want to use. Okay, so yeah, let's stitch that. All right, I think I'm going to go with a 3mm stitch length. Goodness, lost all my tools between last time and this time. I always have tweezers. Those are the 3 things that I keep nearby all the time. Okay, we'll put the needle down, go back 2, and here we go. All right, the unveiling. So basically, see, I just stitched a 1/4 inch from the edge. All right, let's hope. Fingers crossed. Let's see. Like I said, I had put an extra 1/4 inch on, just like 1/4 inch from side to side, 1/4 inch top and bottom. Not 1/4 inch, but just a 1/4 inch between when I made my measurements. Oh, that's perfect. It's not too tight. It's not too loose. See? It's, oh, wow. That's perfect. So, if you want to make yours with pockets, or if you want to place like a ribbon as a placeholder, you would have done that. Sorry about that. I think I did it in one of my other tutorials anyway. As I said, linked below, and I'll try to put 1 or 2 at the end of this video, but you'll see the links to go to my other notebook tutorials. I have one for a regular notebook. I have one for just the irregular composition notebook, and then I have one for the mini composition notebook. But along with those are plenty of ideas for, like I said, for pockets for the inside, pockets on the outside, because I had like a fabric going there, 2 fabrics. But this has been great fun. I think these make wonderful gifts. I have gifted them to quite a few people, my husband included, and I just think they make great gifts, whether it's for, you know, a child, your granddaughter, your next door neighbor, someone at the office. You know, you don't know what to get them. And, you know, if you pair it with some nice pens, a nice package of pens, something like that, maybe some Post-it notes, things like that, I think it's a great gift. And as I said, you can do it with scraps. You can do it with yardage so that you're just using one. You can mix and match any which way you would like to. But I think these are fun to make, and I'm so glad that you were here with me today to make these. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I think it's been great fun. And until next time, remember, be kind out there. The world needs more of that. I'll see you next time right here at Marie's Scrappy Creations. Bye-bye.